But it's bad.
Bye.
Bad.
The-
Anyway, hi. We're live. Oh, we get a like before we even start. Skydog's trying to spoil us. Certainly isn't the FBI agent that I glared down in my sermon. Ooh, man. How's it all going, folks? I don't know why. Like, I have no right to be tired this time, but I have a headache forming, and I'm like, really annoyed at it. I don't know if you guys are, but whatever. Welcome to Sunday, Sunday school. Sunday school on Monday. There we go. I'm trying not to take up all your time on Sunday, especially if you do other service stuff. Yes, we were 5 minutes later because I forgot to do my homework. I'm having flashbacks to high school already. No, it's in high school I wouldn't have even done the homework. Still got B's and A's though. Take that. Capture moments as they. Why would it? YouTube, real talk. Why would I want you to distract my live stream with a random message about your features? What? Why? You could have done that when I was in studio setting this up, and it would still be annoying, and I'd hate you. It's working. So yeah, you guys don't know. You might have heard we got a threatening letter in the mail. So someone has our address out there. It's just funny because we only really use this address in an official capacity like twice so far.
Yeah.
Oh,
the drug use.
Yeah. Well, no, that was one that's in here because like way back, I had your maiden name on it. Like when you lived here when you were.
Yeah, but I have to update that.
You're an update. Yeah, you're right.
How should I change my name?
Like they did the full 9 yards. Like watch too many movies, taped, like the letter magazine things. The whole veiled threat, the 9 yards. Put a fake tithe in with trillions of Huawei dollars. That one actually made me chuckle a little bit. Like, yeah.
That was man.
Yeah, it was mad. You shouldn't mock God.
God like that, especially when it comes to tithing.
Mm-hmm. It's right to be mad. I chuckle at cleverness, even if it's at the detriment of their own soul.
It's just stupid.
So that was distracting this week. But God used that to make a great sermon, in my opinion, and led me to a verse that I'd never read before. You guys watch the sermon.
127.
Psalm 127 makes it very clear that if your work is without God, then it's pointless. It's in vain.
And also building.
And to boot, this psalm was written by Solomon, or at least dictated by Solomon or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. And so the wisest man who ever lives tells you your work is in vain if it's not involving God. If God's not your center, it's in vain. And let me tell you, there are a billion people who need to hear this.
Unless the Lord builds the house, a song of essence of Solomon.
Oh, we'll read it real quick just to further the point. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. A very interesting thing, and flies in the face of, what shall we say, hustle culture, the James Ramsey crowd, and all the rest.
James Ramsey? Dave.
Whatever. Soon no one's going to know who that guy is anyway. And, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a part about the quiver school.
Yeah. Quiver arrows full of boys. And what I'm trying to establish here, right? You can bring up a billion different proverbs talking about lazy people and this, and right, the sluggard will bring about this and that, but you rarely hear the other side of it, which is brought up in this Psalms, which there's plenty of ideas in the Bible to back it up. You can't have, as Jesus says, a concentration on the next world if you're constantly concerned about the material. And it doesn't help that most modern Christians are essentially atheists with benefits, so that material is all they think about every single time. So we come into this situation where, right, the second a kid turns 18, they're like, kick him out of the house, get him out, I'm not going to pay for him anymore. They're like salivating. What the heck is this headache doing to me? Just way excited to no longer have to pay for this kid's bills anymore. Never mind that, like, the second that they, a boomer or whatever is like,
Let's go into retirement.
they're going to demand all the money they can get and whine and complain about not being visited constantly and all the rest. And it's a two-way street for the boomers and the elderly. Like, look, if you kick your kids out of the house at 18, I don't care if it happened to you. Shame on your parents if it happened to you. You understand how that is? This is a silly. It's even in America, this wasn't a common thing till like boomer time. You know, they used to have 10 kids. They used to get involved in the farm. They used to get involved in the small business, the country store, whatever it was. They would stay in the same town, marry the farmer's daughter next door. You understand? But you don't. It's so bothersome to deal with the modern world sometimes because they're so sure that they have everything right, that there's no way they could ever be wrong, even as the world falls apart around them. You know, and it's come to a head. Like, I'm really glad that God put that sermon on my heart, because it wasn't easy to admit that what he told us. Because, you know, I know a lot of people who say, "Oh, God told you that you're not going to be able to find a job," blah blah blah. No, he did, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced in my life, because I've always been a really independent person, but there was an inordinate part of my life that I desperately didn't want to be a burden to my parents and family or anybody else. And apparently it was getting between us, me and God. Or. You gotta make your wife laugh every now and then. The thing is, the later generations, and even a lot of Gen X, have gotten it backwards, where they expect the kids to sacrifice so that they can go off and party in cruises, or even say, like in the Gen X case, you know, they're worked hard. Now it's your turn to work really hard. You never stop working. And you got to take these people aside and go, what are you making your kids work for? Let's say they work as hard as you want them to work, or as hard as you think you worked, or whatever. I don't give a shit. I'm supposed to be a pastor now. I don't give a shit. I said it. Don't you sigh at me.
That was the dog, not me.
You didn't. That was not the dog.
She was. I tapped her foot like that.
That's the.
That was her. She did it
Are
again.
you trying to frame my wife? Anyway, the point I'm trying to get here. Let's right. They work 2 or 3 jobs, pay down the college, or just make enough to maybe afford a kid or a house or something. Not a house, rent maybe, right? And the rising prices of everything. And by some miracle, they're not laid off at their work or whatever it is. And they get a job despite all the Pajites concentrating on only hiring fellow Pajites or Mexicans, and all the rest. And then the dollar crashes. And everything they worked for goes away in a flash. And worse, because they can't own a home. There's no way they're going to own a home, right? There's not even a mortgage. They won't even be given a mortgage because
The credit score.
Well, even just credit score, just wouldn't be able to afford the down payment on the mortgage,
I know.
the first payment, right? Which costs as much as a house used to cost like 10 years ago these days. You They've ran their wheels, they've tired themselves out. For what? To lose it all with nothing to gain. Just on the practical side, what have you done other than sell your kids off to slavery? Yeah, why do we? Let's stop pretending. We've all hinted at how evil the corporations are. No, no, we have absolute proof that they are beyond evil, run by Satanists and sexual deviants and people eating babies, literally. And why then do we not expect their companies to produce evil? And working in them and providing wealth for those evil people isn't probably going to win you any merit points in heaven, is it? And this one's really hard because I have a soft side for deltas, but this part of their mentality really annoys me. It's the I worked hard. I might have worked hard in a useless way, but I worked hard. Was it?
I put a letter of effort in my plan.
Is it like
That made it
if your work does not produce, in this case, actually furthers the devil's goals, it is less than useless, and God hates it. I will say, God hates it because you enslaved yourself. You didn't fight back, and now you're pushing your children to be enslaved. Now you might say, yeah, I made this clear in the sermon as well. Yes, survival, need to survive. Work what you need to survive, but don't be working 3 or 4 jobs. Do what you need to survive right now and concentrate more on things that are going to be more important, even on the material plane. Okay, and this is something for older generations. It feels weird to say it this way. I have had to sacrifice a lot just so that we could have our kids be with us, and I'm not. When this whole thing started, God told me to quit my job because they went too far. They were basically going to put my pregnant wife in jeopardy, and they didn't care, and they didn't have to. Which was
lost a Jeep because of it.
Yeah, very dangerous roads and everything. They wanted to drive it at night. My entire family at night, vulnerable in Missouri weather, because we were down to one car and a lot of nonsense in a horrible neighborhood where people got shot and mugged all the time. I don't know about that.
I heard a gunfire.
There was lots of gunshots.
Right
there was lots of crime in there, and they were going to have to sit in a parking lot with very questionable cameras, dark, right there in that horrible neighborhood, waiting for me to get done with my route. And God told me to quit. And then after that, he told me that he was going to frustrate my attempt to look for jobs.
And you looked for jobs. You got interviews. You got multiple interviews. And at the end, every one of them, nada.
Yeah. And that was a really hard, bitter pill to swallow. But I understand why God did it. Is because he wanted me to understand the perspective of those kids, those Gen Zs, those Gen Alphas, who are in this situation where they just can't find work. Or the work they find, they might as well not be doing because they don't make anything more than just survival means. Which at that point, what are you doing other than working really hard for the devil's kingdom? You make money, you get taxed, it goes to killing babies. You make money for a company that then puts that to destroying your culture. As we know, Amazon and all these other companies are doing, they're actively destroying Christianity, actively destroying culture, actively trying to destroy you. And every dollar you make for them, everything you produce for them, goes to destroying you and goes against the kingdom of heaven. You, in fact, work for the kingdom of Satan when you work at a corporation. I know. This flies in the face. A lot of people don't want to hear this. Like, even a lot of small businesses run into this camp because you have an entire generation in the boomers who, first, have made this mentality of basically making everyone sacrifice for them. Less so of Gen X, but Gen X, because they lived under that auspice and as a generation didn't really fight back. They're so beaten in the ground that they have a crab mentality, where they're the crab in the bucket. right? Gen Z says, no, we're not going to do this weird thing that you guys are trying to make us do. And Gen X goes up and says, you're lazy, pulls them back of the bucket. Only Gen Z doesn't give a crap. It's like yells at them, you're old and stupid, and leaves the bucket anyway. And yes, not all Gen X, not all, but we're not. I actually really love a lot of the Gen X. You guys have been some of the coolest dudes, helped us out in so many ways. It was really funny on Social Galactic when we were getting started, finding out that all these people that we really enjoyed being around were like 20 years, like my dad's age. It was so funny. 20 years older than me. I was like, what? Okay. I've never fit into generation, to be fair. But I have some of their quirks, including wishing for martyrdom and death for most of my life. That's something that God used my wife to pull me out of. Can't really be constantly wishing for martyrdom when you have to take care of kids and a wife. Can't do that. Oh, hi, Kato. Are you here to inspect the Bible? Oh, you're caught now. So, you may think, what am I practically saying? I'm saying it's time for the older generations. It's time, and I know it's rough. Start sacrificing for the next. I'm in this weird stage where I'm already doing that, but I can't do that with my monetary because I have no monetary. All the monetary was stripped from me. Too many times getting kicked out and all this other stuff. I mean, luckily I only have student loans, but unlike other people, it's not that much. And it's funny, when you have a certain amount of kids with certain plans of the government, you basically have zero payments, which is kind of nice. I'm not going to lie. God set it up nicely. There's a situation where I have like $50,000 of loans, but zero payments. And if I keep that up for 30 years, not that the United States are going to last that long, I'd be very impressed if they lasted another 30 years. And it'll all be gone. It's actually really funny because I get these emails every now and then and say, oh, hey, you're ready. You got to do your payment of, and I can almost see the AI go, $0. Like, yeah. It's like, I don't owe you anything. Shut up. Why are we going for this process? Just get rid of the debt already. Like, this is silly. It's stupid. Keep in mind also, right? Don't feel bad for any of the system or anything. Besides, usury is just sin. I have no problem saying that. The Bible makes it pretty darn clear. All the usury in the Bible came down to the year of Jubilee, where all of it was wiped out every 7 years. It's been over 7 years since I got my debt. We're a Christian country, aren't we? I guess that means it should be wiped out. Wait. Oh, that's right. The children of the devil that run our society say, no, we have you enslaved. You have to pay it all back. It wouldn't be moral for you not to pay back what you owe. Wow, I channeled my inner like Big Bear there for a little bit. That was pretty solid.
Bias to that?
What?
Can't take back those lives that you killed, those babies,
right?
That you murdered.
There's something special about people who are overwhelmingly part of a certain sect that got caught with children in a sewer in New York. Certain long things, funky hats. Like rats in the sewer, telling us that we're immoral for not wanting to pay. Like in my case, right? That $50,000 was came from like $9,000 worth of loans because I got a really good deal on my was it a good deal? My education, I literally had to unlearn all of it, and they never actually gave me my degree. So
because of that stupid logic class that was run by a woman.
It's bad when there's a logic class taught by a woman. It's not very logical. She couldn't handle it. There's also a rhetoric class, which was kind of funny. Oh gosh. Special.
You know the IQ of teachers, right?
She was also married to my psychology professor. I actually kind of liked him. But then I learned them
poorly.
Yeah. Then I realized like all the psychology was pretty much nonsense too. And I was like, oh gosh dang. Darn. But it was really funny. in psychology, I figured out it was all pretty much pointless back then because I took a psychology class, got kind of interested. I'm like, well, it's kind of interesting, some decent cases. Took another one. We studied all the same cases. I'm like, well, says it's a different psychology course, but we just learned the same stuff. What? So I took another one just to see, and it was the same stuff. And I'm like, oh, I learned everything I needed to know from you guys in my first class. Good. I was both too practical and too stupid, too smart and too dumb at the same time. I failed to realize what the purpose of the degree was, which was not what I cared about. I shouldn't make this about me. It's not about me. So what I'm saying, if you have a kid who's about to turn 18, right? Don't kick him out of the house, especially if he's a boy. Or especially if he's a girl. Especially both. All right? You've been paying for them for 16, 17 years at this point. You can pay for them a couple more years. All right? You can do that. He's like, but they'll be lazy and no one did that for me as a kid. Yeah, maybe someone should have done that. That sucks. All right, but don't be the crab trying to get eaten. Okay? These are your kids. This is the big time. This is the moment where you show you're not like the boomers. You understand? This is the moment where you plant those oaks. The classic line, like civilization is built on men who plant trees whose fruit they will never enjoy. This is the time. Okay? Whether Iran turns into a full World War III situation or is another just kind of side war like Ukraine, side for Ukraine, like how many million people died in that war, but still, right? Still didn't take off global, right? This is the time. The next couple of years, anything your kids make in the satanic system is going to be taken away from them. In an instant, in a poof, in a flash, the dollar is going to collapse. If this turns full and the US starts losing, which it probably will, given how it got drubbed in Ukraine, given how it's maybe got a week of defensive ordnance left to hold off the missiles, and Iran has gone through something like 2 to 5% of its missiles. Yeah, so if you don't understand the math of that, countermeasure wise, we've gone through enough that we can sustain this for another week defending the bases and stuff. And they have only gone through 2% of their missiles. Needless to say, they can keep this up for a lot more than a week than we can. Not that I'm American. I'm not part of the American system anymore. They put me out more ways than one. But you get the point. When that starts happening, do you want your kids to be in a situation that when the dollar collapses, everything that they saved up is gone? Do you want that? Do you want them to be stuck in a position where they're renting and giving all their money to a boomer or a Jew or a Chinese guy who's like halfway across the world, and all the money they could have been putting towards preparing for what's coming is instead just sucked out of your family? This is the time. This is the time. This is the time to sacrifice for your kids. Yes, pay for them for a couple years longer. My God, you did it for 16, 17 years. You can do it for a couple more years. What should they be doing right now? If they're a boy, you know what you should do? You should buy them a drone. You should buy them some guns, if you're in the state that allows that, but the drone especially. And you should have him practice on the drone every day. You should have him practice with his guns every day. You make it clear to him, like, all right, I don't want you to go to college. I don't want you to go get a job right now. I mean, maybe a part-time job, whatever. It's something to build some funds, but make sure he's putting it in. And then have him practice the skills that you need him to have for your family. This is a sheer practical moment. Right? This is almost more political than anything, but I have to be practical right now for this message to make sense, right? As the Psalm said, we need to not be working in vain. And if God is not in this work that you're going to be putting them through, which, he's not in it. He cat. God's not in the work. He's not in that work either, cat. Right? God's enemies, Amazon, Microsoft, their CEOs have made their companies the enemy of God. Anything you work for them or their subsidiaries or any of the big corporations or even smaller companies that are beholden to these corporations, even if they're buying stuff from them that they need, right? You're giving into that system. You are funding God's enemies. You're giving them more resources to use against his kingdom and his people on earth. And you're not going to get anything back from it because they're going to take it away in mass inflation and poof, dollar collapse. That's not even a political statement at this point. COVID, I'm not crazy, right? You guys remember what happened in COVID, right? You're not goldfish. You remember in COVID what happened, shutting down our churches and the dollar collapsing like 20% in what, a year? What do you think is going to happen when it's not just something like COVID, but it's an entire World War III situation? And like the Reichsmark, they just get rid of the currency and start on a new one. You think your kids working like slaves for something that just goes away are going to be motivated to help your family afterwards? Honestly, if I wasn't a Christian and I had that happen to me, I would just run off to the Bahamas or something. I don't care. Like, I'd be gone. Of course, I'm a specific type of person that we all know about. But if you're not careful, that could lead to all kinds of nasty stuff. So what, on the practical scale, should you be doing for your kids? Should be full practical note. They should be buying a drone, learning how to fly it. They should be getting guns, learning how to be very proficient every day. They should find a martial artist to learn under. Wish I had money for that right now. Yes, you should pay for it. What you need to be thinking about is if he's your son, you need to think of it, if this helps you. Like, oh, I'm making my son lazy. No, you are patroning a knight. You are patroning a knight. You are funding a knight's training for a coming war that's going to be here and it's going to be fast. It's going to involve drones. It's going to involve guns. It's going to involve physical fighting. And he needs to be ready for all of that if he's going to protect your family. You are getting old. I'm a millennial and I'm getting old. I'm going to have a limited function in this coming struggle. I'm going to do my best. And I really hope that we have enough time that my kids can get old enough. It's a drill. It's down there. You hear the beep, 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 beep. That's its official, vehicle. Forgive her. She's a little antsy now that we know certain people don't like what we're doing and have our address. And this house has been robbed before, very specifically.
In a very weird way.
I mean, we might as well give details. Her grandpa used to work for
the U.S. Navy
and intelligence.
And some stuff. He was a sailor, but yeah.
No, he was a naval intelligence.
I know.
And his died. A very interesting break-in came in, took the safe that nobody knew.
It was a massive safe.
Right? Only the safe that had all of his documents in it, and not really anything else. By documents,
medals,
medals, books. So it's okay. Now, this is the practical thing. This is how you sacrifice yourself for the next generation. You do everything you can to prepare them. Right? And let me tell you, your boys will respect you a lot for this. Because if you have the resources now to help, again, I want to iterate, you got to do what you got to do, right? If you absolutely cannot keep paying for him, then yes, he needs to find something to help the family out. But try to make it as little as possible so he can concentrate on building skills, getting those kinds of resources going, because all of that money is going to go bye-bye very soon. Who knows how long we have, too. That's the worst part, right? Dollar could collapse tomorrow. It might collapse in a few years. But a few years isn't enough time to build any kind of money in today's economy, especially if you're trying to pay for a car, pay for an apartment outside the house, and all the rest, right? Worse, let's say your kids gets scattered and something happens. You can't help each other if you're there halfway across the country. Sometimes halfway across town is too far in these types of situations. You understand what I'm saying there? I mean, we're in across town could literally take hours. I think, so who cares? And now, that's the practical side. You say, well, this is a kind of a strange Sunday school. It is. Because I need to establish the practical nature of what we're talking about here. The sermon was where I stayed completely spiritual. This is where we talk about the practical side, how you can implement it, why it's not bad to take care of your kids for a bit longer than 18 years old, okay? No, that's a little different. We'll establish that. There's a difference between a family taking care of, providing so that their kids have time to get things ready for an event or something crazy happening, and trying to control and do a bunch of bad things that my wife had to put up with, including psychosis, drugs on her. We're not talking about that. If you're a person, that's different. You're not listening to me anyway. Now it's. I don't know who's more important to keep in the home right now, but girls especially, do not, for the love of all that is holy, do not send them to college. Do not send them into the workforce. Do not do that. It's worse than
They
just.
need to learn skills to be a husband.
Well, it's worse than that. You're sending them into the lion's den. Okay? It's a situation of life and death now. And this is that kind of bad. If you're in Europe right now, for example, your daughter going, or even in the States, right? Where was the one white girl who got stabbed on the bus? Sending out just to work now isn't a healthy prospect. You're putting them at risk when it's unnecessary. That's dumb. Don't do that. You need to start thinking on a practical level of the coming judgment against America and what it's going to look like. Start reading Isaiah. Start reading Jeremiah. Start rereading those histories, because this is the kind of judgment that's going to happen. You don't want your little girl working halfway across town, having to commute on a bus because she's trying to save money, or even in her own car where you can't help her really quickly. Where if something flashpoint happens, or just angry McFace butt of unhealthy Somali kind decides that white girl looked at him wrong today and just stabs her on the bus or drives her off the road, common is going to become even worse as time goes on. Right? So we should be preparing our kids for that. And they, in return, are going to be a lot more grateful to you, because they're going to look around at all their friends. Like, let me give you an example of my own life, right? I have had to move into family houses. I have lost everything because God's called me to this route partially, but because my dad did the whole you can't stay here, you got to get out, and I did, and I tried military for a little bit. It was a reserve officer training course, and before I even got into the military, God said, "No, you're not doing that," and I've had to figure out life ever since. But I've had a friend this whole time who we were in the same college. His dad was a missionary as well. His dad was a missionary in the same region as us. He got married similar timing to me. He was a little earlier, only by a couple years though.
2 years.
And we had kids much the same time. His kids are about 2-3 years older than me, older than my kids.
The oldest one is.
Yeah, but we actually had kids faster because we were crazy.
Yeah.
His dad, with his retirement money, his 401k, bought him a house. Not only a house, a property that he was able to start a business on using that retirement money.
So this only could be close to time.
Yep. That's sacrificing for the future. That's understanding what's at stake and what's important. And let me tell you, it's hard not to be jealous of the guy sometimes because but he's such an awesome guy. I can't do it. I wish my dad had thought so forthrightly. I wish my dad would sell some of his rental properties when things got hard for us. But no, right? It's a joke. And it always has been. You understand from that perspective, I regularly broke down of tears of anger and frustration, yelling at God, the times I had to ask my dad for money. I finally got a job in the in-between, by the way, because God ordained that during this time, we would work for a time. And my dad went on a cruise just to rub it in, right? I thought they were under financial strain and they couldn't provide for us. And I was dragging down the family. I was in utter agony at night. And the man was just mad because he couldn't go on his cruise. That man was a missionary, by the way. Still is. That burns me sometimes. And I want you to understand, my anger for that is water on the bridge now. But Gen Z, they don't have the temperance. Okay? They're gonna go full nuclear. If they see you guys didn't sacrifice for them, dude, you're out and they don't care if you starve in the street. Boomers and Gen Xers are not ready for that. They have no idea how bad it's going to be. They have no idea how little loyalty Gen Z has to them. And millennials too, come to think of it. Millennials, they almost hate more because, well, you know, we just kind of gave up. Yeah.
Just like your fathers.
Yep. And it comes down to what isn't working in vain and what is not working in vain. There's the cult of work, as I put it out there. You run into it all the time. It's this constant idea that if you're not working 80 hours a week, you're late or something stupid. And that is a straight up mixture of pride and devil propaganda. Okay? Because the only entity that's going to benefit from your children wasting their early years away that they could be using building skills or getting ready for what's coming, or even just working out and having rest and being ready to go when things fall apart, even if it's just that. Like, the amount of frustration that they're going to have with their families over this when the wealth goes away in a poof. And everything they worked for is gone, the little bit that they did get. Because remember, right, Gen X, you guys worked for just a crust from the boomer pie. Millennials got even less. Gen Z's got even less. And that little bit they got is going to be taken away from them when that dollar collapses. It's all going to go away. Who do you think they're going to blame for that? Like, do you imagine you worked your life away and it's all taken away when you could have been preparing, you could have been having kids or whatever it is, right? That's the other thing. You should be encouraging your 18-year-olds to be trying to get kids, have families, and start establishing now, because the younger they start having kids, the sooner those kids, right? And this is just sheer practical Aaron talking here, all right? You want them having kids sooner so that they're old enough to start joining the fight sooner. I know this is hard to deal with first. The modern world you live in, the understanding. It takes 15 to 16 years to get a kid ready to fight back. All right? Earlier, sometimes in rare situations. But so you need to start that now, as soon as possible. That's just sheer practical. On the other hand, it's just good to have kids. It's good. And yes, pay for that too. And look at your states. Take advantage of all the government programs. I know that sounds no. Look, that money's been taken away
He's
from
gonna
you.
make the devil pay for it.
Yeah, make the devil pay for it. He's already taken it from you. He's already taken your inheritance from you. But he's done it in such a way that he wants to pay for all these immigrants, all this stuff around, right? Well, you can take advantage of that. You take advantage of that because that's the only inheritance you're going to see from your boomer parents. The
If
only
it doesn't
ones.
go into a retirement home.
Right. So, it sucks because a portion of it's taken by the government in the in between, right? If you get taxed and the government gives you money back, you've lost money because they take. But yes, unfortunately, we can't stop that. But don't let them have all of it. You know how fast they'd have to change EBT if every white dude jumped on it right now? You know what EBT is? Like 90% Afghani right now. Like it drives with 90%. Or like it was some crazy number.
Mhm.
And why do I say it? Yeah, break the system. Break it. Make the devil pay for it. They will begrudgingly, because then they'd have to change the system that they're using to fund their soldiers and their soldiers having more kids. You see how that works? See, right? They're forcing you to give them money so that they could pay for bigger Muslim families, pay for the bigger Jew families too, actually, funny enough. That New York case is crazy. I don't know if you guys seen it, where the Ashkenazi Jews were caught kicking black people out of their ghetto, out of their schools, and taking all the money meant for their public schools.
Oh,
That's so funny, right? No, I don't know. I might have lost people to that, but I don't want those programs to be like that anymore either. But don't let them just take it all. Figure out what you're going to apply for. I hate it too, but if we all jumped on, their system would collapse. They would have to change it. They rely on white boys not jumping on, not breaking the system. That's what they rely on. So, and the more kids your kids have, the more they can get write-offs for having kids. I know it's a disgusting system in a lot of ways, but it really does help. Take it from a guy who has 4 kids. Just the tax credit, if you make some money, is like 8,000, right?
in some states, yeah.
Yeah, and
Some states are more.
this is what Jesus is talking about when he says, "Be as wise as serpents." Right? Be as innocent as doves, but as wise as serpents. You have to understand when we're stuck in this stupid system, we need to take every resource we can and direct it towards what's going to happen when it collapses. So, use their system against them.
What was meant for evil got turned to good.
Turn it to good. And the best part is, the more white people do it, the more Christian people do it, the more the system's going to collapse. The faster it will collapse, and the more less resources they can drain towards all the invaders and all the invasions and the destruction of the church and all the rest. Now, you may say, "Hey, you're trying to be a pastor, blah, blah, blah." Yes, I'm trying to be a pastor here. Latins, Muslims, Arabs, I want them all to be Christians too. But they have to make their own Christian communities and churches that are regional based, and they need to stop invading Christian lands. I get on you should hear my rants about the crusade against the Hussites, the absolute farce of a crusade, the shame that falls on the church, all of the church for that, because guess what? Even the Protestant churches were part of the Catholic Church back then, and nobody said a word. Nobody said, "Hey, Pope, we shouldn't be killing these people because they want a slightly different cup and want you to stop selling indulgences." Ooh. Keep in mind, a man was burned at the stake for that because he told he said, indulgences. If you don't know, that's selling. Okay, so technically, God, it depends on who's talking about it. Depends on which priest is trying to sell it. But back then, according to the Pope's terms, whatever, it was selling, getting your soul out of purgatory. Heaven faster, basically. The idea being you sacrifice your money to the Pope, essentially, and his boys would pray for your soul and you'd get out of purgatory faster. not technically salvation, but it was definitely sold as salvation by the lower priests who were selling that. Oh man, you should. Yeah, my wife's giving me a look. They would also they would like be one of the motivations that kingdoms like England had was this
That's
little thing.
very-
Like King William the Conqueror, I think had like the amount of money that he paid the Pope for his soul in the afterlife is pretty insane. Pretty insane. Oh man. Yeah,
Bribing to get to heaven faster.
essentially that is what indulgences are. And the Hussite rebellion started because one of the Hussites, the man who would become like basically the martyr to be from the Hussites, put up a very public counter to this, saying the Pope should not be selling indulgences. And then also they wanted some slight difference to the Eucharist, which was just amounting to a different cup and some other stuff. That was it. And the man was burnt at the stake for that. In response, the Hussites threw all their politicians out the windows. And in response to that, the Pope declared crusade, and they were invaded by the Holy Roman Empire, which was just Germans killing people because they wanted territory. That's all it was. That's what the entire Hussite rebellion was. Christians killing Christians over land that they shouldn't have been fighting over.
Useless arguments.
Useless arguments allowing it. Here's something to think about. Spain. They were fighting pagans and they were bringing pagans into the fold as Christians. They were blessed. When did they start falling afoul? When they were invading their fellow Christian lands in Europe. When did they lose their fleet? They lost their fleet when they tried to invade Britain. And again, right? They lost the majority of their forces and their riches when they tried to force the Dutch to stay in their empire. And this directly led to their treasure fleet being stolen and destroyed by a Dutch admiral. Wouldn't have happened if they weren't trying to greedily take Christian land. See how that works? One could argue, now this one's a bit more of a stretch, but you get the point. When did the West start collapsing? Was it because they were doing crazy empires against like China and India and, stopping all the cannibals in Southeast Asia? No, it was when they started killing each other in world wars. World War I, World War II, you remember that? That's when the great empire started collapsing. And then the unofficial World War III, Cold War, right? And then the United States just decided to off itself like a genius. Right. What I'm trying to point out here is I want people outside of my race to be Christian as well. But we all need to stop fighting each other like morons. We have bigger enemies at play. That was a bit of a side note. We need to stop invading each other's lands. Concentrate on the pagan, on the cult, and the evil. That's what we need to concentrate on. And it's amazing to see what God does in history with this. The entirety of Southeast Asia was full of cannibals. Like the worst kind of cannibals you could think of. Britain walks in with like 10 guys with 5 Martini rifles between them and a little bit of spunk. And the next thing you know, that entire region has been cannibal free for like a couple hundred years now.
What, they had interest in the Philippines? They were dying out slowly by the time.
Yeah, no, but that was Spain. They never
Spain.
had Philippines.
Oh, they never
Britain, there were cannibals on the mainland,
like
in like Thailand and that area.
Cambodia,
Yeah,
India.
you know why Thai people? We have lots of coffee shops now, and they have a lot of problems with sexual stuff. But at least they're not eating each other and trying to eat everyone. It's because the British.
Just eat your dog.
Because the British came in and went, stop that crap. And because God was on their side, they were able to do it with a few ships and some angry Scottish guys with kilts. And the next thing you know, there's no more cannibals. Generations of cannibals stopped being cannibals. It's actually really mind-boggling to think about. You guys have heard my whole rant about the Japanese and the cannibals on
I remember that.
Taiwan. That was a much harder sell, right? If the British had gotten a hold of that island, probably wouldn't. Well, maybe they did. I gotta look up my history. Maybe they just ignored the interior. They might have done that. But I think the Dutch were involved at Taiwan. I'm getting all confused. I gotta be careful. I don't want to spout things that I don't know. So, but again, right. A lot of people don't know the colonization of Africa. You know why the African population exploded? It's because they weren't dying anymore. Because the British made their lives better. And not just a little better either. Like, one of the best things that ever happened to the Zulus was getting conquered by the British. And I'm not even exaggerating. They killed more of their own people than the British ever killed in any of their wars or to any disease. And we're talking brutal stuff, like smashing baby skulls on rocks, that kind of brutal stuff, killing pregnant women, torturing them to death because they were pregnant. That kind of nasty stuff. That was Zululand, baby. So when did the British Empire start to collapse? Oh, I don't know. When they started meddling with Europe to the point that they lost hundreds of thousands of men to wars they didn't even need to be involved with. But it started even before that, when they joined with the Turks to fight the Russians. When the Russians were Christian, well, they're more Christian now. You get the point. Like before the communists took over, there was this whole war before World War One called the Crimean War, where Russia was encroaching onto the Turkish land to take Constantinople back, which is not a bad goal, if you ask me, and could have easily been done, but the British were convinced to fight with the Muslims against their fellow Christians. I'm getting lost in the weeds. Wow. We need to start our homework stuff here, so I'm going to bring it here. God's calling us to start sacrificing for the next generations and stop trying to make them sacrifice for us. All right? That means we expend our wealth to give them time to build up skills, to make families, to get resources that they need, like food, guns, stuff. Get the skills they need ready now and not waste away in a job that's going to give them basically nothing and take it all away when the dollar collapses, right? So, no more of this kicking kids out at 18. No more putting them out into a world. Like, why the devil created that system of kicking kids out at 18 was because this is the time where they're the most aggressive, the most easy to manipulate, and the most pushed by their desires. Especially the men in that situation. The girls, the most vulnerable, the most needing of male attention.
And they don't know what they want.
Right? It's so brilliant in an evil way, because they have all the education centers. We push them into these education centers. They give them all the party they could ever want, all the desires, like the devil's classic game. Here is all of what you could want. You just have to join my kingdom. Of course, like 90% of them are going to join the devil's kingdom when you do that. They're not thinking clearly. They have hormones are going crazy, and then you put them in a school that's just, pushing them to party 90% of the time. What did you think was going to happen, Boomer? Oh yeah, the Boomers wanted that to happen. Excuse me, Gen Xer, Millennial. What did you think was going to happen? Of course they were going to turn on us. Of course they were going to turn into blue-haired crazy people. This one drives me crazy. I know, I'm getting a little too personal again. Both of my sisters have left the faith. One is a literal witch now, and the other one is a feminazi to the extreme. Both of my brother-in-laws left the faith.
One wears a gorilla dress.
One is a tranny. The other is an express atheist. Not quite militant, because he doesn't have a serious bone in, like he's an atheist because he's a prideful little ass. He's actually taller than me, so I don't. Also, Moses used that word. Should be careful though. Don Quixote.
He is definitely.
So, I'm not just talking about education. Workplaces have workplace cultures. Okay? You put them into work for a corporation, they're going to grind on them. And if they can't change them, they're going to fire them at the worst possible time. And they do that. Some of that's spiritual on purpose. Some of that's just timing. They grind people down. And if you're not willing to be grinded down, if you say you stand by the principles that your parents taught you, that God has instilled into your heart, they will kick you out. You understand? Or beat you down enough that you never even talk about it or think about it. And then they just steal all of your life energy away. All of that breath of life, that precious breath of life that God's given you, they will drain it away like vampires. And we want these companies to fail too. So why are we giving them our labor? Let them fail. Let them grab all the Pajites, and the Pajites will consume them from the inside out, and then just leave when the companies are dead and gone. I'm sorry, that's how they're going to do it. I saw it in FedEx while I was working with FedEx. Not so much DHL. I saw it in DHL when I was working with DHL. The management was all women and Indians, and let me tell you, they were driving it into the ground, and they didn't care because they were just getting their money and watching the white guy's company get destroyed, which was all they cared about, right? They just wanted to siphon the resources out. They didn't care if the company was there in 10 years. They don't care. They don't care if the company's there in 5 years, as long as they get their money out of it and can jump to the next company. It's corporate culture for you. So you can't put your kids into that culture, right? If you can provide for them now, and if you've been providing for them till they're 16, you can provide for them for a couple more years. All right. The collapse is probably going to happen. I can't say when, but like if Iran goes really bad, and this is the Syracuse expedition, a couple years, maybe 10, if we're lucky. I'm hoping for that right now. A part of me that doesn't, because I want some justice for all those Epstein kids, if you know what I mean. And that's not going to happen as long as this system exists.
I was thinking what if the parents to distract from the Epstein stuff?
Probably. There's probably a little bit of that, but I would also say they've been
mixed.
The timing of them doing it right now,
and especially when they're talking to each other.
Mm-hmm. More likely they were planning the Iran thing, and then they planned all this other stuff to go along with it, because that's how these things work. You don't plan something as big as a distract from something. You have this thing going on. You have Iran being planned to go, oh hey, let's just put them together, and suddenly we have a distraction. It's kind of thing how that stuff works. And then again, the other side is getting really scared. I wouldn't be surprised if they started an entire war just to try to distract, because you have a point there.
It's not
you're not the first one to say it.
But it's like all the stuff about like the Erica part.
Yeah.
All that other stuff. Like they're mumbling jumble. They're like throwing everything on this side while this is going over here, and they don't know. They're trying to do it all at once.
Well,
shotgun blast it all.
Scared people do crazy things. Okay, they're scared. I really wish sometimes I could reach through my screen and grab some of these people who are, on the internet going, oh, woe is me. Like, dude, they are so scared of us. They're so scared of what happens when the Hussites have had enough. What happens when the Hussites have enough? They throw you out of a window. What happens when the Dutch have enough? They eat you. And maybe I want to hold off on the cannibalism, but there is a Dutch. Yeah, we're famous for eating our own prime minister. That's kind of funny.
Disgusting.
It is pretty funny. I laugh. Probably shouldn't. There is some part of strange poetic justice tainted on my soul. Let's just feed them to sharks or piranhas when the time comes.
Talking about Mexico. Just feed them.
Yeah, that's true. You don't feed them to their own prodigies. Yeah, that's kind of nice. I'm sure there's plenty of drug cartels that would actually be okay with this. But too many of them are involved. Gosh dang.
But also, like, I was thinking when you're talking about, like all the Amazon stuff and about all this
Mm-hmm.
corporate stuff, and then you think about also for the women and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There are things out there and skills out there for women to do.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
like, I do that Amazon. And
Yeah.
here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Learning the ins so you know what to do when you own your own business.
Yeah. This would
I
be
wish
way
that was something I could have done instead of going to university. That I actually learned basic skills. My feminist mother did not.
No. That's something else. Whatever.
I don't remember anything I learned in hospitality except for, I don't know, how to be nice while wearing a skirt.
That's you being nice.
No.
That was a bad joke. But that's another thing. I'm glad my wife brought that up.
I want to be able to make things eventually at home.
Yeah. So she's talking about the merch that she's making right now, which is nice. One day we'll
it
get
will be breaking away from Amazon, and it will be
we'll have our own equipment. It'll be great.
But till then, you gotta.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do, as we've established.
You said, make the devil pay for it in a way. Yeah.
But I'm glad she brought this up. Whatever money you were planning on putting towards your kids' education, instead say, hey, go start a business.
Buy you an equipment.
Go buy them an asset you can use. That's even better. Like if you're really uncomfortable with just paying their bills for a couple years more while they build up skills, fine. Buy them an asset so they can start their own business. Maybe they're in a place like Missouri or something, man, where there's
a lot of opportunities.
Buy them a super lawnmower and have them start a lawnmower business, even if it's not profitable.
Start, I don't know, a garden. And then,
gun range on your property.
And about living in your home, even if you have a small, do a family compound.
Yep. And
that way they can have their kids right there with you. You don't have to worry about what.
This is also really, really important because when this debt system collapses, anyone who actually owns physical property is going to be way ahead of the game. Instead of buy them a van that they can then do those hot shot stuff, they like delivering stuff or clearing out garbage or that kind of thing, whatever, right? Way more valuable. And now your family has a van, which is actually a pretty good asset when things are falling apart and you need a large vehicle that can hold a lot of stuff or a lot of people. I'm not saying you can armored vans, but I'm pretty sure there was some interesting stuff on the Mythbusters about certain things like phone books stopping 9mm pretty good. Just saying, there's not a lot of weight. Put it in the side of the van. Stop a lot of bullets. For riots, naturally, yeah. Just riots. I need an armored van.
Happening now. Gosh.
Right. Think of events like that. Start sacrificing it now. Build your treasures in heaven. If you start sacrificing your wealth and your retirement stuff to instead give your kids the best possible chance they can ever have and give them a chance to have a family early on, and that's going to be a big one.
Especially with health things.
Yeah.
Seriously.
They get them having as many kids as they can right now while the hospitals are still decent enough to help out if the kid needs an emergency birth.
Throw birth control at your kids ever. Yeah. Don't even make those jokes.
And if they can get a bunch of the best part would be if they could have them at home. But if they're going to be some at-risk pregnancies, you don't want to wait for the hospitals to completely collapse. And that's really rough, right? So, but be guarded when you're in there. All right, we went through this.
As soon as you find out they're pregnant, or even before pregnant, you better start praying.
Yeah, be praying over it. Be very through COVID. We had our kids through COVID, and we saw the decline. Like it was every year we had a kid, and every year the decline was probably 10 to 20%. That bad of a decline in the quality of the staff, the quality of the nurses, the quality of the advice we were given.
And anesthesiologist.
But luckily, we had the same doctor the whole time, except for the last one
one.
was a stand-in doctor. He was all right. It was more the anesthesiast.
The anesthesiologist wasn't even.
She was on her phone the whole time, and then.
Are you giving someone an epidural? Do not straighten their back.
Anyway. Yes. So, I know this seems political. It's really not. This is practical kingdom building. God has called us to build Christian kingdoms again in the wake of the destruction. We are the remnant that he's preparing. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire, only the Western one. I'm not talking about the Orthodox, right? What came from that? What came from the collapse of the Roman Empire? The decadent, evil Roman Empire, right? The Roman Empire wasn't always evil, but by the time it collapsed, boy, it was controlled by some evil people. Nero, anybody? Right? What came from that? Oh, that's right. England, France, Germany, Spain. Russia was already kind of a thing, but you get the point. And, it's kind of funny how all these nations, all these people were like obsessed with calling themselves the resurgent Roman Empire, and I always thought that was funny. Even the Muslims try to do this. The Turks referred to themselves as Romans when they conquered Constantinople. Like in their language, Sultan is like Caesar. And one of the things, like, I laughed so hard when I heard about this. Like when they were dealing with the Holy Roman Empire, they like wouldn't come to the negotiation table unless they changed their name, because according to them, there couldn't be two Roman empires. And they were saying that they were the Roman Empire. Turkic tribe. That's how hard the Roman Empire was in everyone's minds back then. That's so interesting. Well, it's actually not as uncommon as people would think. When barbaric people conquer a much more civilized people, for example, the Mongols, when they conquered China, they almost always assimilate into the culture they conquered.
What's even funny about the Mongols? They brought up the Muslims.
Yeah.
They were shot. Like the grandson of either the grandson or the great grandson of Genghis Khan was really shot to public.
They were like the amount of depravity that they saw their Muslim subjects do, like shocked them so bad that they made like a slightly, the guys who would kill people for being too tall.
It would make
right. They were shocked at what the Muslims would do. That's that will never stop to crack me up. But we need to get into our homework.
Yeah.
But build your treasure in heaven. Build your treasure in heaven. Sacrifice for your kids now. Plant your oaks. Give all the money you can think. Like, guys, your retirements, if you have any, do you think it's going to last when the dollar goes? Anything in your retirements or whatever you've built up that isn't a physical asset, like gold or a house and, debt, I might add, or something like that, gone. Just like that. Dead. Like it never existed. Because guess what? Anything tied to the dollar doesn't actually exist. And only exists because the government says so. And if the government's not around to make people say that it says so anymore, that to say a petrodollar is there to force people to keep, buying gas with dollars and all the rest, right? That's no longer there. Dollar would collapse overnight. I don't know, maybe not overnight, but maybe. You don't know, I don't know. Most of these collapses happened really fast. It will happen to any currency. This has become more political than I meant for this stream, but it's unfortunately tied to the subject matter. Right. So, what my last thing is, pour all of that retirement, anything you got, into physical assets for your kids. Okay. That was exciting. So, Luke chapter 9 has a lot of stories in it. Luke kind of does this fun thing in chapter 9 where he basically shotgun shells stories that some of the other gospels will like spend a couple pages on, or like half a page. He'll just go, oh yeah, and then he'll this, that.
He was the cliff notes of it all.
Yeah, he was more interested in different details, being more of a physician and stuff. But we have things like, again, Matthew chapter 10 gets into more details, but we have the classic. It plays into what we're talking about. Chapter 9, Jesus sends out the disciples with no extra clothes, no walking stick, no food, no bag, nothing. They're just to go out and preach the good news and do miracles. That's all they're to do. And whoever rejects them, God rejects. And they're to shake out their sandals, like flicking them off and move out. Classic story to remind yourself of in this materialist world, right? That'll want to jump ahead to where Paul says, everyone, we tried hard to make sure that no one paid for us. Blah, blah, blah. Remember, Paul was doing that because he was going to foreign nations and wanting to make sure they understood that he wasn't there to take their money.
Oh, hi. To do mass migration. I mean,
yeah. Right. It was very serious about it for good reason. Next story is Herod perplexed by Jesus because, at this time Herod killed John the Baptist. So he was like, is John the Baptist back? What the heck's going on? Jesus feeds the 5,000. Luke does more of a cliff notes of this one. You get more detail in, I think, Matthew again, but don't quote me on that. It might have been John. It's one of those things. Talks about it. This version of Luke's just like, we found fish and bread. Doesn't matter who talked about it. But he gives interesting details. Like, he gives organizational details because Luke cares about this stuff, and you'll see it later in Acts as well. Everybody else doesn't mention this, but he mentions that, they made the crowd gather in groups of 50, so they'd be more easily distributing the food, which is very interesting. Luke's always been more practical.
He was a doctor.
Yep. Peter confesses Jesus is Christ, but leaves out a few details there, right? Classic. Foretells his death. Right. Again, multiple times Jesus is foretelling his death. He doesn't want his disciples going in blind, even though they're going to act like it's funny to me how many times Jesus says it, but by the time it's actually happening, the disciples are still like broken and shocked.
It's interesting. It says the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and on the third raised.
Yep. No, the Transfiguration has always been one of the more interesting stories in the Bible because it confirms that we have jobs in heaven. That is not just retirement in the clouds, because Moses and Elijah are sent by God down to converse with Jesus. And it seems to be like a business meeting almost. Like they're converged, they're talking, he gets the Transfiguration. It's also for the disciples to see and have this moment, but it's like almost like a strategy meeting. And it makes you wonder what we're all going to be doing in heaven. Are we going to be sit back down for some reason? I don't know if any of us are as comparable to Moses or Elijah, but I wouldn't mind some... my cat's going to jump on me. Oh, God! I think I wouldn't mind being sent back as an avenging angel or something against all those pedophiles who've mocked me this entire time. Yeah. Wouldn't mind it. Anyway. But that's important because boomer talk, right? It's heaven to them. It's retirement in the clouds. No. We have jobs. We have things to do. You don't put people through immense trials to test them.
To get a shinier mansion and
yeah, you don't do. Mom put it. You test people. You put them through trials to build their strength, to give them a task. I don't put you through tank school and have you pass a really hard test to see if you can tank properly, to then have you retire and never drive a tank. Right? I train you, I work you so you can drive the tank. Like you should be teaching your kids or having them self-learn how to drive a drone that could carry, a few grenades that are a couple pounds each.
Heavy stones.
Millstones. Yes. Oh, and piñatas. Explosive piñatas.
Anyway.
Pineapples. Next. That's what they used to refer to grenades because they have the pineapple-y bumps on them.
That makes a lot of sense. Holy cow.
Yes, I believe the term was eat pineapple kraut or something like that. Jesus heals a boy with an unclean spirit. This one's fascinating because Jesus lack of faith for the gender. Like, I have this with boomers a lot in my mind sometimes, and just everyone in general. I have this like you got to remember a lot of the things online are not real. There's lots of bots out there. There's lots of hired CIA types and alphabet agents and soups and marketing from different things and weirdos trying to push narratives across YouTube and Reddit and all the rest. Right, because that's power. If you can control the conversation, you can control people. So of course they're doing that, especially when you can create like 10,000 AI chat boxes, all messing with people's heads. But there is still an obnoxious amount of people who are just so materialistic that death terrifies them. Like they think death is all there is, like life is all there is, and it's just gone, and it's worse, and it's just really tiresome because it makes you a coward. It makes you a coward, and it's disgusting, and I hate it, and I'm sick of all the cowardice. Ooh, but that's okay, because I'm called to the time I live in, like Christ was, and so are you, by the way. Jesus again foretells his death. Who is the greatest? That one, this story always cracks me up. Other ones give a lot more detail about this. Like I forget which gospel it is, but like there's one gospel where like a couple of the disciples' mom comes to Jesus and says, "Put one of my sons on your left hand and one of your sons on your right hand." And Jesus, like, like I crack up. Like, could you imagine you're like a boss or something, and a mom comes in and says, "Hey, make my sons your left and right hand man." Thanks, mom. But again, Jesus highlights what's important to him isn't as what we think is important. Whoa, man, he really does shotgun so many stories.
Right here, where John the Master said, "We saw someone casting your name."
Yep, we're on that one right now.
And we tried to stop him, and because he doesn't just walk with him.
And God, Jesus says, "Whoever's not against you is with you," and this is actually pretty accurate. If they're not trying to infiltrate you, anyone who's positive towards Christianity and doing Christian preaching, like
not just
even Christian nations, no business. Again, the Hussite rebellion. Like what was that to the Holy Roman Empire? More land. That's all it was. And again, I love like 90% of the Crusades, but we have to recognize when they were used poorly. And again, it comes down to like, why are we as Christians so obsessed over who's Coptic, who's Catholic, who's this, who's that, who's Lutheran, who's not, who's independent? As long as at this point that they say Christ is Lord, they don't worship the devil in any way, and they, are against human sacrifice and all the worshiping of dark gods, I'm cool with them right now. Yep. A Sumerian village rejects Jesus. This one's kind of interesting because a village in Samaria rejects Jesus, and the disciples go, "Let's call down fire from heaven." And keep in mind, at this point, they had been doing miracles everywhere, so they absolutely thought that this would happen. They were like, "We're going to burn them." And you know what? I actually kind of think that could have happened. Remember, Jesus killed the fig tree by just bah, and the fig tree withers and dies.
I didn't realize he turned everything disciples.
Yeah,
and he sent them away.
And he told them, "Will you calm down? The fire will come when the fire will come. We don't need to burn them up for this." Bah. And then the cost of following Jesus is very interesting because we have like 3 stories wrapped into one that Luke found really important. For example, right, there was one person with this. I think we have the more detail with the rich young ruler and other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But he says, "Foxes have holes, birds in the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay." Sorry, it's just I didn't expect that to hit so close to home there. At least I do have a place to lay in my head, but it's not mine.
Yeah, very close.
This has been a very personal stream, and I apologize. Back to what we were doing. Another guy, like the other two stories are interesting because Jesus goes to them and says, "Follow me," and they both say, "Oh, let me do something first," and God says, "No, there's no time. You come now." And a lot of people, it sounds harsh, like you said, "Oh, Jesus's ministry was only like a year to a few months long. You take a few weeks, you miss half of it." You know what I mean?
He was on a time crunch.
He needed you to go now, and that's why all of chapter 9 in Luke. Dang, we really shocked. Just
There
like
was a
Luke,
lot there.
we shotgun blasted through a lot of it. So I hope you've been reading it. Next time is chapter 10, which he takes some more time, though there's still a lot of chubbies. Love Luke. He's an interesting guy. And God's with us, and he's preparing a remnant. Sorry if this goes a bit more political than Sunday schooly this time. Very personal, but I felt like you guys needed to hear all the details and background and everything God has led us through to get me able to be inspired with that sermon that he spoke through me. It's not easy getting to this point either. Yeah. But we follow God and we work with him. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for showing up. I know we went long, and that's why we lost some of you guys. But thanks for showing up when you did Skydog and meowing at me because you're hilarious. Like, subscribe, share. Remember to check out the dev streams and the sermons. And we will see you on Saturday, I guess.
Yeah.
Check out the shorts if you want shorter versions of these videos. Pass them to your friends. It'd be fun. All right.
Bye.
God bless. We love you. Second button every time.